All right, Brian. Wonderful to have you on. How the heck are you today?
Doing pretty good. I live in Pasadena in California, and we're having winter for the first time in a million years. We
Seriously.
got snow, we got all kinds of stuff.
California is going through a
Really
little
wild.
weird winter phase, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally.
I wanted to ask you about something I was reading about in your work about helping creatives um, get to where they want to be without all the suffering.
Yeah.
And that really caught me. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. Typically, I think I want to make sure that I believe that everyone knows that when I talk about someone being creative, I think that everyone is creative, resourceful, and whole. So everybody is a creative, whether we classify in the society that we live in that your job is creative or not. I believe that everyone is creative. That being said, I tend to work with people who we do kind of classify as creative. So writers, directors, producers, photographers, actors, a lot of actors, a lot of writers, and those art forms require of you a degree of putting yourself out there. Unless you want to be, putting on a play in your garage for your, dolls or your grandma, there's a degree of putting yourself out there and continuously putting yourself out there because typically your ambition is big. You want to do bigger than just, you're always on to the next bigger, more impact, reaching more people or making more money if that's a part of it as well. And so I believe a unique muscle, we might say trauma, a skill that's needed in being able to put yourself out there again and again and not feel defeated or feel like no one cares or question all of your life choices because you don't get the response that you expected. And so a lot of what I have learned to do is to help those types of people come up with systems that they can rely on and habits that they can rely on so that instead of every single time it's, time to put yourself out there, it doesn't become the huge conversation of did I do the right thing with my life? Am I doing the right thing? Is this my purpose? Blah, blah, blah. Because it's my belief that your purpose is given to you something bigger than yourself. And that's not the question. The question is how you're going to go about going towards it. And if I can see more people getting closer into executing their purpose, then selfishly, it's the better world that I want to be in. And so that's why I say that, I help creative people get what they want without suffering, because I believe that the suffering is something we can leave behind, but I don't think you're meant to do that by yourself. I'm a non-denominational reverend, which means no dogma, no doctrine, no religion, all religions, right? The basis of spirituality. And so one thing that I believe is, we enter heaven two by two, whatever, or nirvana, whatever word you want to word, but you enter heaven two by two. So it is unfair to think that you need to do this by yourself. And so the suffering comes from when I think you separate yourself from the rest of the people who are here. You separate your own journey from the rest of the people who are here. You say, I need to be liked. I need this. And let's all just be very, realistic. We all had really well-intentioned parents, but we pick up stuff from our parents and our grandparents and ancestral drama and trauma and all of that. And so we can relate to our passion and our purpose and the attention we're getting or not getting with that same parental kind of vibe, and it gets in the way. It gets in the way of you really doing what you're meant to do. And so that's the work that I do. It's help them through marketing or reaching out or all the different forms that you can imagine of putting yourself out there, advertising, whatever it is. That's where I come in and help them. And typically I'm talking about someone who is their own business, right? So I'm a writer. That's my business. I'm an actor. That's my business. I'm a director. That's my business, right? So it's not the same as someone who, I think it's the same muscle as a person I've got my own candle company, right? But typically those are the people I'm helping are people who are their own business, like trainers, right? So
Right.
those are the kind of people I work with. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think the suffering part is an interesting word. And you explained a little bit about that. Um, does anybody ever push back on maybe like, well, is suffering the same thing that you mean as like hardship in going through the business or jumping through hoops to get to where you want to be? Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the differences in that?
Yeah. I think that you can't, someone said once, and I don't know who said this, but like, if it's not hard, it's not worth having or something like that. And I don't actually think that that has to be true. You can choose the way of hard or not. You can decide to relate to something as though it's difficult or not, or that it's a challenge or that an obstacle is teaching you what you need to learn. This is not to make up for disparity in the world that I'm saying this. I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging that. But I also want to say, you know, yes, there's going to be times when you're going to be sweating. and it's going to be the kind of sweating you want to be doing, hopefully. Like, I think that even, I think that there's something called the myth of readiness, which is we think, like, when I'm ready, I'll do it. When I'm ready, I'll do it. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if you're Olympic 12-time gold medalist. When you get in the water, you're about to jump off that ski lodge, you go, oh shit, it's about to happen. Like, you have that feeling, right? And you need that feeling. And it's part of what makes you human, and physiology and the chemicals that go inside of our bodies and all that stuff too get us hyped up, right? And so to me, you're not going to suddenly, like, everything's going to be so easy. I'm using that word softly right now. Like, it's going to be so easy to click send on this email. Well, actually, no, you're probably going to be pulled to I'm reaching out to this person I've always wanted to have a meeting with right now for the first time, and it's going to bring that little scary, edgy, or you might call that exciting feeling. I think our bodies register it the same way. It depends on how you label it, right? So that isn't to say you're never going to get your hands dirty. But I think the perspective we want to bring to this is that hardship is different than adding a double layer of hardship, or adding suffering to it, or imagining, like, bringing in, like, every time you click an email, if you're saying, should I even be doing this in the first place? Does my family care about me? Does anyone love me? Does being creative even have a purpose? If that conversation is there, is not the same as, are you clear in your communication with this email where you're making this ask, right? And that double layer of suffering is what I'm trying to pull people away from.
Man, I love that. I mean, that was like a great way of explaining it. So I think if you look at something, you read something, you might take it a certain way potentially. And that clarification, the language of that, I think is so critical. I think for anyone, but especially, I mean, there's so many different creatives and things of that nature. And people have this kind of self-inflicted suffering.
Totally.
That,
And not
right?
intentional. It's not
Right.
intentional. It's not self-inflicted on purpose, but
Right.
it is like bringing in a bigger, like, if you can believe, if everyone listening, if you can just believe that thing that you want to do, the very most-est, if you can believe that that is a done deal, you will do that. Then the conversation about how you do that becomes so much easier, because you're not constantly questioning, should I even do this? Is this the right thing to do? And even if you can believe it for a couple hours of a day, when you first sit down to your computer, for first 2 hours, I'm just going to believe I'm doing the right thing with my life, and these are all there. For the first 2 hours, I can do it, and then just see how much differently you're in the flow. That's when I think you can get all those divine inspirations and all that.
So when you're working with people in your work, what are the kind of the most common self-limiting things that people come to you with?
Such a great question. No wonder people call you doctor. I don't want to annoy people. I don't want to email more than once. That's a big one, right? I don't want to do it. I don't want to annoy people. I have to get everything perfect before I reach out. I don't know the right people yet. I need to know more people. It's not about loving up on the people I already know. These are some of the biggest ones, I would say, that I hear again and again and again. And I don't know about you, but I open my email and the first thing I do is delete all the ones I didn't care about that day.
Right.
Right. And it's on that day, because the next time I hear from them, it might be a day when I do care about hearing from them. And, A Course in Miracles, which is the tradition I was trained in for my reverendship, it will say to you that to try to understand the motivations of others is dangerous to ourselves. And I'll say that again. To try to understand the motivations of others is dangerous to ourselves. And everyone listening knows this, because everyone has dated somebody and they got a text that confused them. And they started to go, why didn't they say this? And why aren't they writing me back right away? Or even the amount of time it took for them to write you back means something. We make meaning out of everything, right? And so if we are able to change or let go of, I would not even let go of, not pick up the story we want to write about those things, that is a space where people get into a lot of trouble, I would say. And then the other thing is, like, I just haven't met the right people yet, or I need to go meet more people. Like, chances are you have been provided the community that is necessary for you to achieve what you want to achieve. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be tapping into that community more deeply or asking a specific question of that community. But I want to believe that something greater than myself has connected me to the people in my life. And so if I'm willing to see everything as a miracle or nothing as a miracle, that's what Einstein said. That if I'm willing to see everything as a miracle, then I've been provided everybody that I need to meet. My job now is, I need to make the ask. Hey, I'm actually starting this business. Do you know anybody who fill in the blank? or I'm trying to do this. I'm not good at it. It's my first time doing this. Do you know anybody who works in this arena? I'd love to have a conversation with them. Instead of, let me see if I can Google online who I have no connection to, and like try to write then you're studying like in the perfect email that I can ask them for a coffee? I don't want to annoy them. So I really think those are the three that I hear the most. I haven't met the right people. I like the perfectionist piece. And what was the other one that I said? I lost it now. Those are the three pieces. Those are the things I hear over and over and over again. It's those three things over and over. Like, I don't want to annoy that. Yeah, I don't want to annoy them. I have to get everything ready first, and I don't know the right people.
So interesting. Yeah. When you first started doing this work, how did that land on you when you first started hearing these things from people?
It's so antithetical to the way that I see the world.
Mm.
That's so my immediate reaction is, what are you talking about? Like, what? And so I think there was a little bit of in my initial early coaching that was just like slapping people into submission. Like, don't believe that anymore. Do it this way.
Right.
That's wrong. Like, there was a little, like, I was very much bossy, I would say. I'm still a little bossy in my coaching, I would say. But I think sometimes getting, Tony Robbins talks about, he swears a lot when he's speaking. And he said, part of the reason that I do that is it makes people jolt. It jolts them awake. It gets them to listen in a different way. And I think part of that is true and part of that's a cop-out, because swearing is fun and easy and it feels good and whatever. But I think it also does wake people up in some ways. And so I think that in the beginning, having that little bit of a slap from me would like knock out, I think of like the collars you put on the dog that have like the little zap. It'll zap them so that they pay attention.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It kind of like, I don't want to be a shot collar of a coach, but I'm saying, I think at the time, I think at the beginning, I was like, what are you talking about? Of course you have to ask for help, because the mistake people make is, when I'm perfect, then I'll be able to reach out for help, or then I'll be able to reach out. And the truth is, when you're perfect, you don't need me. You don't need help. You don't look like you need help. And in fact, many times I'll have people who will reach out and they will write this beautiful email trying to just explain who they are and and I'll get to the bottom of the email and say, you've made zero ask. What do you want them to do? Is there a call to action here? You're just trying to show off? Because if you sound so perfect, which is delusional because you need to ask for help, then how do we know how to help you? I don't even see a role to help you in that.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you acknowledge, like when you acknowledge your obstacle in front of someone, it allows them the chance to be enlisted, and allows them the chance to say, oh, I'd love to help with that. And by not naming it, I think two things. You look delusional, you sound too perfect, or I don't know if I really want to help you because you don't know yourself enough for it to be even worthwhile for us to have a conversation. Like, it doesn't sound like you got your stuff together yet here, right? It sounds like you're talking about a lot of things. And I think, it's already, there's an obstacle. I think most people have a hard time asking for help.
Yeah, for sure.
No one likes to ask for help. I remember when I was acting, I was an actor before I did this, and I had to send an email to a bunch of people reaching out about getting a manager, and I could not send the email. My friend Sharon had to push send on the email for me, right? And the greatest things came from that email. But I was afraid to send them. I'm afraid to ask for help for some people. And when we start to normalize that humans like to be connected, humans like to be able to help, and the people who aren't there to help you aren't meant to be there to help you. So allowing someone to say no is a gift, right? I think part of the reason why people are afraid to ask for help is they're actually not good at saying no. The people who are good at saying no have a really easy time asking for help.
So interesting, right? So
because yeah, right.
I almost compare it to, it's like, maybe it's different, but when you're giving someone compliments and they have a very difficult time receiving the compliment, they almost feel that it's not worth it to them. They're not worthy of the compliment, in a sense. It's a very interesting psychology, Vaughn.
Yeah. And also, I think it's also funny when you say that, because I was just talking to my partner this week about how I was reading, I'm a big manners person. Like, I love to learn about manners. I think that manners can help us.
I feel the same way, by the way, Brian.
Okay, really? Okay, good. Yeah, good. I'm also not like, if you have bad manners, I'm like, you're a bad person. But I think manners can help us a lot, right? But I'll just say that one of the things that I learned when I was reading is, like, when someone gives you a compliment, you're not supposed to give one in return. You're supposed to say thank you. And if you have the occurrence to say something nice to them later, you certainly can, but you're not supposed to just say right back another compliment, because it deflates their ability to compliment you. And I was like, oh, that's a tough one for most of us. I think most of us have learned, you say something nice back, and the way you say something nice is give them another compliment, right? And so even making yourself sit in, thank you for saying that, is or whatever, is a little uncomfortable. So, but there's something to be learned, I think, from that moment. But yeah, so the reason why I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for help is because they would have a hard time saying no to someone. They're
Man,
the person. And so like, it's interesting, like, oh, well, let's not my inability to say no be the reason I don't ask for help. I'll work on
yeah.
my ability to, let me get better with my boundaries also, by the way. Like, that's another thing I should probably work
That's
on.
it's definitely
Right.
boundaries
Right.
is an interesting one. Do you think though that this is something that is particularly difficult? I know like most people have a creative aspect to it, but let's say actors who you're working with a lot. Is this a particularly difficult aspect of working with actors and knowing that world and the amount of rejection and putting yourself out there? Is it particularly difficult in this environment?
Yeah, but yes, yes, and I should say, I
That's
have a
right.
really hard time with actors making themselves special. Let me
Mm.
say what I mean by that. Or anyone. We're all special and no one is special. You know, there's something that I steal this phrase. You never want, I think that many of us can suffer from terminal uniqueness, which
Oh,
is my situation is so unique that none of the advice that I hear can apply. Yeah, but you need to know this about me before you tell me that. And nothing that you try to help me. Yeah, but you don't understand this about me. Yeah, but I had this kind of parent. And this happened to me when I was a kid. And my teacher said this to me. And I almost had this job or this. And so we can bring this terminal uniqueness to the point where it is a cage that you have self-imposed. And this is not to take away, there is trauma that needs to be healed and there's trauma that needs to be acknowledged. There's lived experiences that deserve your psychic attention, but we can use them against ourselves. Right. And I think many people know that and they're working on that. I'm not saying that like this, like just so easy, flip a switch and it's all good. Right. That's
yeah.
not what I'm trying to say at all. But when we suffer from terminal uniqueness, it's like, so for example, in my courses, when I work with people, there'll be like a few people on a call, like there could be 70 people on a call. Someone at the beginning of a call will ask a question. An hour later, someone will ask the same question using different words, not realizing the answer that I gave or the way that we worked that out is exactly applicable to their situation, but because it wasn't the exact words, but I'm having a lived experience that may feel different than the words that that person used, right? And so I think it's important that we kind of temper that. I think actors can particularly suffer from that particular malady, I should say,
Mm.
because when we are, because as an actor, so much of you it's important for you to be in touch with this instrument over here, right? This body, this heart, this soul, right? And so there's a doubling down on the focus of how do you feel in some ways.
Mm.
I think that's true of most artists, though, is like, we're using feelings to help dictate what we're creating sometimes if we're not using just our brain or our thoughts, right? And so that I think is it is particular to the audience that I can work with at times.
Yeah. Do you think this terminal uniqueness, is it something you feel it's intentional sometimes or it's just unintentional? It's just
Unintentional, but the moment you identify it in yourself, you can now be like, oh, shoot, I'm doing it again. Like, then you can start to notice it, right?
right.
But you have to start to figure it out a little bit to hear it first, right? It is painful. I think terminal uniqueness is a painful,
Mm.
it's a bludgeon. It leaves you feeling lonely. It leaves you feeling like the only lonely. It feels like Evan Hansen on the outside looking in, like you're the only one who's not
Right.
in the game. And we are given affirmation of that inside of our society when you don't get chosen for the team, when you're in 6th grade, when you don't get chosen for the cheer team, or you didn't get the lead role in high school. There's plenty of, you didn't get the job you wanted, or that client didn't say yes to you. You're given places to evidence. If you wanted to run with the idea, I am terminally unique, you could find evidence in your life around that. Right.
Yeah.
And there's another way to look at it, which I think is you are perfectly special and so is everyone else.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the reason why I think we rebel against that is means the death of the ego,
Mm.
right? Because you're special, I'm special, everyone on the street is special, everyone is special. And that doesn't take away anything from my specialness. It
Right.
adds to yours. We're all special. There's certain gifts that you have that I will never have. Right. So
Right.
the wealth of gifts here, I was talking to an actor yesterday. She was really in the grips of terminal uniqueness because she'd booked a job for this commercial, and she'd already shot it, and it was with this famous person. And then 3 weeks later, her friend booked a commercial, same company, same famous person. And she was like, I can't get excited for her. I booked that job. Like, why does she have to book the same one? And why does it have to be and all the people in the world? Why does it have to be my friend? And she's like, not liking herself because she
Yeah.
wants to be excited for her friend, right? But she said, I feel like by her booking it, it took away how special it was for me.
Mm.
And that is of her own
Yeah.
creation, right? And so it's just so, when you see it in an example, you can kind of understand it, I think, a little bit more. But yeah, I see that that part comes up, and it can really, I think it's like a way of, turning against yourself without knowing that you're doing it. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to take anyone's specialness away. Absolutely not. You are special for sure, but your specialness can be that which hurts you in some ways.
Man, it's so interesting. I love this stuff. How have you related this to your work in spirituality as a reverend? How has this been infused into your work?
Well, A Course in Miracles would say, you think you have many problems, but you have one. And that is that you believe we are separate from each other.
Mm.
And so it's a very clear distinction to me that, you're seeing me, we're recording this over Zoom right now, and you can see this sign behind me that says, be kind, be kind, be kind. And to me, all spiritualities can be summed up in those two words, be kind. And so what I find is we don't realize how much we take kindness out of business and business relationships, or we don't offer humanity. And the truth is, it's a vulnerable place to be often. And I don't want to say this like being cordial manners, because I know we talked about manners earlier.
Yeah.
This is different than that. A lot of times when you're going public, let's say with your big idea, whether that's creative or business idea, you are the vulnerable one first, because you're like, hey, people, I'm doing this new thing. Or, hey, I need an agent if it's an actor. Or, hey, I'm having a gallery show. Or, hey, I'm looking for 10 new clients in the next couple of months. Like, that's a vulnerable position to be in, because you're really opening yourself up. And what happens is we want to armor up, of course. We want to sound perfect. Business is going great. I happen to have a couple spots over here if you're looking to get fit this year. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Right? Well, cool. Cool. He's doing good. Good. He's doing great. I'll let him know when I got somebody that needs a job, needs something, but like, he's doing great. That's not the truth. The truth is, hey, September is a slow time for those of us in fitness. And I'm looking for 4 clients to take me through the end of the year. Would love some support. If you know anybody who knows it, I've got something going. Like, that is a way to say specifically what's going on with you. Another way to do it, rather than making it about the intricacies of your business, is to talk about, why do you freaking care so much about helping people in this way?
Mm.
And I think a lot of us see this in our content creation, but we don't always see this in our asks. For those of you who may create content here, because you might be in your content, you're saying, well, I'm taking a stance on junk food, and I'm taking a stance on using MCT oil, and I'm taking a stance on this or that, whatever. And then what is the stance for why you do this work in the first place? I mean, why I do this work with creatives, it's very simple. It's pretty selfish, and I think that's okay. I work with creative people because I love working with people who are really expressive. And I love, because I can immediately see if something is working for them. And I was an actor, so I have all this language that I can bring to it. So it feels pretty good to be able to do something that I'm good at when I'm working with creative people who put themselves out there all the time, right? So I will specifically speak into, I love this because I believe that creatives can change the world, and I want to be a part of that conversation. That's what I want to see. That's the world that I want to see. And it's also a conversation where creatives, I believe, are always political. There's no creative act that's not political, I believe, that in terms of like creativity, the way we're talking about it, in the way that exists in the world.
Yeah.
And that means I get to be having those conversations and living out that mission and those values in the conversations that I'm having. And so I think that's an important thing, that you say why it is important to you, and that can feel vulnerable. And time and time again, what I have found is that vulnerability is the way to success. And so many, inside and out, is what I found over and over again.
How is that conveyed to actors who are, trying to get all these different jobs and gigs? And like, how do I create that vulnerability in my mission to do this versus maybe just the vulnerability in, like, let's say, auditioning, and that,
Sure.
The difference between those two?
Yeah, I think that, this usually comes down to representation. And that's something I helped a lot of actors get representation, right? Get managers and agents. And the reason why I think managers and agents are such a tricky thing for actors, and I think everybody can relate to this who's listening, no matter what kind of profession you're in, is because an agent is someone else who is hired by you, but they choose you, and it is their job to, in some ways, be a parental figure, because they're going to be the one who's proud of you as you're doing your work, and they're helping you make some money and all that stuff. There's a lot of baggage that comes along with that. And so most actors want to show up shiny and perfect when they're reaching out to representation. Like, look at me, I am doing it. I'm getting A+ over here. Aren't you proud of me? When in fact, when it says like, this is a moving train, everything's going great, I'm getting all these auditions. If you want to get on train, get on board, let's go. Well, if I'm the manager or agent looking at you, then I go, you don't need me. Things are going great. It doesn't sound like I can do better than what you've got going on.
Right.
So the vulnerability that an actor has to bring when it comes to the business, not just in an audition, which is what your question was, is here's what I've achieved, which is your resume. So I don't want to reduce you to your resume, because I know you audition 100 times to every gig you book. Here's my resume. And then here's where I've been close. Here are some of my almosts. Here are the places where I got really close to getting this job, or I got a call back. And this relates, I think, to any business where like you get the runner-up, or you're the finalist, or you get part of a grant, or you don't get the grant, but you applied and you got really far in that. This is showing you're in the mix of this business, right? You're in it, you're out there doing it. And I think that is vulnerable, because you're not reducing yourself to your wins, and you're willing to be seen for your effort. And I think we can, wins can be checked off very quickly. Effort is something we need to be able to track as well. And I think a lot of us can say, I'm persevering, I work really hard, but no one cares. No one cares. No one cares. Those are words on a page. Show me that you work really hard. This casting director called me in 3 times. I've never booked yet, but I know that they love me. That shows me you work really hard, because I'm seeing a track record, right? And it's vulnerable, because you're saying, I haven't booked with them yet.
Right.
Or whatever the thing is. Again, I want to make sure everyone who's listening is relating this to whether you're an actor or not, of how this can work, because it does not matter. We want to see, and the truth is, that is empirical evidence. This casting director called me in 3 times. Obviously, they are a fan. That is empirical. It can't be fought with. It's not an opinion. What we tend to do is, here's all the awesome things I've done, make a list, and then let me say a bunch of opinions about myself. I'm a really hard worker. You can always count on me. I'm a professional actor. Blah, blah, blah. No one cares. No one cares, because anyone can say that.
That's
and
true.
I'm not to say that because I don't love you saying that, and I don't care about that at you, but you have to convince me, because I'm standing at the line at Starbucks with my kids screaming, looking at my phone, reading my emails, and you're saying this to me in an email. I'm going to pick the one that feels more real to me. And that is vulnerable. That's vulnerable for you to put out there. I'm in my career, even though I haven't achieved everything that I want to. Wow. I think that is important. And remember, I always think that people, and this is an important lesson that I had in my own work, is people respond more to your striving than to your perfection. Wow. So when I say to someone, I remember when I launched my own podcast, it was nervous. I had like 12 episodes in the can before I ever let it out. I was like, nobody can listen to this. I didn't want to be somebody else, just another person with a podcast. I had all these stories written about it, right? And so when I was going out with my podcast, that's what I was writing in my emails. I've been sitting on these, 7 to 12 episodes for the past 9 months, because I was afraid of being perfect. Well, I'm breaking the seal. Here's what it feels like inside. If you've never felt this way, then please stop reading this email and delete it. If you've ever felt this way, please stay with me. Like, I really narrated my own experience of that vulnerability of putting it out into the world. And I was really happy with the way my podcast launched. My podcast launched with a tremendous amount of vulnerability, of asking which one of these, I don't know what to do for my cover of my artwork yet. Which one do y'all like first? Right? Like, what, would you please, are you open to giving me a review? Right? We open to a lot of reviews and a lot of, when we first started podcasts, because I said, this is brand new for me. I even called out Apple. I was like, Apple's not the best at helping new podcasts. Here's why I need your help. And like, that is me striving. And because I've done my homework, you're more willing to get on board when I explain, this is why Apple's difficult when you're a brand new podcast, unless you're Joe Rogan, and I don't want to be Joe Rogan. Right. So like that, right. So like that was all part of a way that a person on the outside, or the community you've cultivated, gets to say, oh, I get it. I see the human here. And I think that's really important.
I think it's incredibly important. But we're not necessarily socialized or having these conversations with a lot of other people. I think it's a much outcome-oriented situation.
Yeah.
What's the outcome I want? And that's what we need to focus on. That's generally what the conversation often devolves into.
Yeah. 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 And I think that, when and I hope you get the outcome you want, everybody. I hope everybody gets the results that they want. But I just want to make sure that if we are, I call this the constant grocery shopper. It's like you go get all the groceries at the grocery store, you fill up your refrigerator, and then you're making your list again before you've even eaten. So like you got the gig and then you're thinking about the next gig. You got the gig. You're like, can we have some nourishment of
Like some
what you
food
just
here.
did for yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take it. Right. And so, I think, I do hope you get your outcome, but I always like to relate to, I hate the word goal. I mean, I don't hate the word goal and I do hate the word goal. Here's why I hate the word goal. I hate the word goal because I think we usually set ourselves up to, if I achieve that, then I am successful. I think there's been a lot of backlash around the word goal lately, actually, because a lot of people understand that there's more to it than that. But I always say, you get about one sports analogy a year from me, but the one that I like to use is, if you can think of God, universe, Buddha, whatever you believe as a quarterback, and if you're running around the field trying everything new and we cannot see where you are going, you're not going to be able to catch the ball when it gets thrown to you. If you are running towards, I want to make my first, 6-figure whatever, because this is why I care about it, and and I can see you walking towards that, God, universe, Buddha, whatever, is going to know how to throw that ball to you. Now, that ball might look like you hitting your goal, might look like this incredible opportunity that's going to help you get on the way there. But if you don't have a goal to walk towards, you won't know if that is an opportunity, a distraction disguised as an opportunity, or an actual opportunity. You'll just, anything that's coming my way, I'm getting, because I'm running all over the field. I'll take anything, right? But if you know where you're going, you may say, oh, I can change course now because this is awesome and I want to do this. But I think you have to have a way, something you're heading towards, right?
Yeah.
And it just allows you to be more nimble, I think, when you have a direction. I think a lot of people may be afraid, because a lot of time when I talk about goal setting, someone says, yeah, but if I choose that, I have to say no to this. I say, well, how about, can we just choose like the most important thing? Oh yeah, I can probably do that. And then all of a sudden these other awesome things happen along the way, because we can see where you're going. We know where the train is going. People want to get on a moving train. They just want to know where it's going. They want to know where it's headed.
So are you a proponent of, how do I say this? So people who are like doing a lot of different things, and it seems like there's just so much going on, or focusing on a few things really well and moving towards that. What do you think about that?
Of course, I'm thinking about myself right now, right? And so what I'm thinking about myself right now is, so I have a team, I have a company, I have things that we do inside of my company. One of the things that I help actors do is I help them get agents. We've talked about that. That's one of the things I do. There is time on my calendar every single week where I'm with actors, helping them to do that. In that time, I am focused on that one thing. There's a lot more hours in the week, right? There's the time that I spend in a meeting with my team where we're talking about efficiencies and how to support them. And can we get everybody health insurance yet? And how that part of the conversation gets to happen. So am I doing a lot of different things? Sure. But the bottom line is where we started. I help creative people get what they want without suffering. So if I'm walking towards that, that is a path that has come with it, learnings about diversity, around scholarship, around reparations, around who do we want to be supporting in this? What kind of business are we becoming, right? So I think, I believe in that. If everyone's read the book, The One Thing, where when you choose one thing and you just go towards that, it can be really helpful to you. But what I would say is the one thing doesn't have to be, I'm making vanilla candles and I'm not making anything but vanilla smelling candles.
Right.
It could look like, I really care about how people feel in their homes, and I want to create a line of products that helps people feel cared for, comforted at home when they're in their home. And so that mission, I think,
The mission
attached to whatever the actions are, I think, is a helpful way to think about it. So I am a fan of, when you're in the beginning of whatever it is you're creating, go small rather than go big to start, right? Niche down when you can, and then you can expand from that niche. But I think it has to be rooted in a ministry. I think whatever you're doing it for a reason. If you're not doing it for a reason, you will lose steam, and it won't because you didn't just get enough good sleep last night. Bigger than that, right? You'll lose steam because you're not rooted in the purpose of it. This is why, people get excited about startups, but when it doesn't make a lot of money, they want to leave and go to the next job, right? It's just about the money, which there's nothing wrong with that. but we have to really check it. I bet you that money has meaning to you. Oh, to
Yeah.
me, that money means I'll be able to provide for my family, or I'll be able to get the kind of house I've always dreamed of because I want to have 6 kids and I want to be able to provide for them and send them all to college, like have the life I never had. Like, so whatever the meaning is behind it, I think frees you is the bigger question. I guess is where I'm landing with this, is a bigger question that doesn't need to be only a few things or do everything. I'm much more a fan of the few things, but it still has to be rooted in why.
Yeah. And you mentioned the ministry. That really resonated with me. I don't often hear that word associated with this topic.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think ministry, reverend, non-denominational reverend, church, temple, all these words have bad connotations now.
Right.
Because so many, I'm not dogging religion, but a lot of religions have brought things down. Not good things have happened, right? And there are certain sects of religions, sects, I'm saying sects of religions that are evangelical, puritanical, go against people's political beliefs, or like really you must do it this way, there's no other way. And so I think a lot of these words have gotten connotations that don't, they don't feel right anymore. And so when I'm saying ministry, I'm saying, what is your life's purpose? When I say what is your life's purpose, I sound like an asshole because I sound like every life coach in the world. I think the ministry to me, at least for myself, brings up something different. We separate it from its religious meaning, any religious meaning, and ministry doesn't. You administer to plants, you administer to the right. So what is your ministry? What is it, the change that you're hoping to make? Or change might feel like too big of a word at times, but like, what is who you're ministering to? Who are you helping? Who you're being of service to, I think. And even the words of service, I think sometimes feel a little lame to me. So ministry makes more sense to me because it lets me feel, I mean, it's a little egotistical, but it lets me be in my own purpose. It lets me know that I'm in my purpose or when I'm not. It helps me make decisions. Like, this is not something I need to worry about. This is kids play. This is actually what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think that this is, go ahead.
Humans are meaning makers, man. We make meaning out of so many things, but we've in many ways bastardized a lot of terms. And see, ministry to me is a beautiful term. I love it. I think it's just so beautiful. It makes me think of positive things, but I also acknowledge that it has a very negative connotation to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I want that to change. I want to turn these things into better feelings for people, because there's such a negative feeling for so many people when you use spiritual based terminology or religious based terminology in business.
Totally.
When in fact, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's totally amazing. And even when I have to say non-denominational reverend, I would love to just say reverend and know that I'm not talking about any religions, but I have to say that because I don't want anyone to be obstructed from hearing something that might help them today, or to take with them what they're meant to get from this conversation. Right.
Because they'll close the door first. Yeah. If you say something, the door will shut. Yeah. If it's given in this, it's like, oh, all right, nope, had a bad experience. No, this has been bad. It's how you phrase things. But there's so much beauty in the terminology that we've got to like reclaim it.
I love that. Yes.
We got to reclaim it to restore the beauty of what it actually is for that.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Yeah, very much so. I mean,
you just have a different take on it, man. Yeah.
You have to also think that, like, we might think of only creative people as having a ministry because it's easy to understand. Because obviously you're an actor and we've bought into, if someone becomes an actor, it's going to be a challenge. The whole world has bought into this idea, right? Because when everyone to know God, or whatever you believe God is, does not think that at all. God does not say, you know what? I'm going to make all the artists, they should have hard lives. That's going to be what happens.
The struggling artist, the starving artist.
Right. We've been sold that story by La Boheme in the form of La Boheme, Moulin Rouge, Rent over 1 million times, right? So that is to say, the accountant has a ministry. The accountant who is happy at his or her job has a ministry, understands why they're doing it, has made meaning of it, has made impact of it, has understood what it does for others. When people get to the heart of who they are, they really are in their most honest space. Almost everyone has something about helping others at their heart. And so you can be an accountant who says, I'm just moving numbers around, and maybe it will fulfill you to a certain degree. But I can imagine, if you imagine I'm an accountant who's helping these businesses that do these incredible things because my business does this, and I know what my clients are and what they do in the world, and that I am part of that engine or whatever does that account, I can imagine, is a lot happier.
Yeah.
And even better at their job, because this does not make you dumber. It makes you smarter. You start to see on a different level what it is you're able to do. You don't become dumber when you become spiritually evolved. You become smarter. I want to make sure everybody hears that, because I think a lot of people can think, yeah, but then all my edges are going to get softened. Do I sound like, I mean, I don't think my edges have gotten softened at all.
No.
I might be really nice now, but like, I will just as much say, no, that is a dumb idea. Can you do it this way instead? I will say that to you. Can we do it this way? This is not the way to do this, right? But it's given me the perspicacity to know where there can be kindness in any situation. It's given me the ability to see beyond what the word someone is saying to me. Like, should I partner with this person or not? They look great on the resume, but I just don't have a good feeling about them.
Yeah.
And that feeling is something we need to learn to trust at times, good or bad, I think. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think that feeling is such, and you get that when you meet people, the feeling they give you. I tell this to people all the time. It's like, how do you make other people feel like when you meet them? Do they feel like, I just don't really want to be around this person? What is that about you that people have this, when somebody says, well, if you ask somebody, well, what's the biggest misperception people have about you? Now, people seem to not want to spend time with me. Okay, this. What's going on here?
Yeah.
What's the feeling you give people when you're around them? I think it's really important to like digest that, or really
Yes.
reflect on that. Like, what is it about my presentation of self? Not what you're wearing, just you, what you bring. How does that affect people? It sounds like you're doing a lot of that. Is the vulnerability of self and how you make people feel about you.
Yeah, I always say this to actors. I say, you can have the most perfect resume, incredible credits, awesome headshot, amazing reel, have just gotten off the set from a multi-million-dollar movie. But at the end of the day, when you meet with that agent or manager, all that's already happening, they still have to have a good feeling about you.
Yeah.
That your resume doesn't matter at that point. I have to have a good feeling about you. And so the question you ask is so good, because I think people need to take a moment and say, how do I make other people feel just by being in the room?
Yes.
And it's probably been true about you since the day you were born. So rather than, and I mean, you might have picked up some baggage along the way,
right?
But you can ask your best friends. They'll tell you this if you don't know. How does it feel to be around me when I'm talking or not? And they'll say great. And your best friends who can be vulnerable with you that say, well, sometimes I'm on edge because it feels like you've got a certain way you want people to be. Like, people will give you both the good and the bad here.
Yeah.
And I don't even label it as bad, but like how it's, what comes into the room. And when you know what you bring into a room, you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
Right. You can put people at ease. You can put them on edge. You can, I'm not saying to like use it for bad reasons, but I'm saying you can use that in a way that you should use it, because that is the gift you've been given. That's what's unique about you. That's what you'll bring to people if you're an actor, when you're on set, no matter what character you're playing, when you're a business person, what you'll bring into those meetings. I remember being in a meeting once. It was a tough meeting, and I knew I was going to a tough meeting. And I remember I was like, there's going to be people full of fear here, including myself. And I was like, I want to really be able to communicate in this meeting. And I came up with this little phrase for myself, and I don't know where it came from, because I wasn't looking for a phrase, but I just had one. And the phrase was, and y'all throw it out if the word doesn't work for you, but the phrase that came to me out of nowhere was, God is also here. For some reason, that just kept me in the room in a way that when this man said something to me, I heard beyond the words he said. And I saw in him, I've known this man for years, a change in the way he started to communicate to me. He suddenly knew, oh, I'm safe. I can speak what's honestly bothering me. It was a business meeting. It was a tough business meeting, essentially. And so it really affected so much of what happened next, because we didn't have to have our haunches up, have our armor on, because we could learn and listen in that way. And it does. And I think we tend to think like, certainly you're going to do all your legal cross your T's and dot your I's. This isn't to say you don't do that, but then you listen at this level, then you have a meeting at this level, then you know which T's to cross and I's to dot. You are more certain. Because no matter what happens on the page, still you probably want someone to do something or take some action, and this way you are really feeling through what's going on here.
I just love this so much. I mean, this resonates with me so much. And I think some people think I'm crazy when I do this, but I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I always check in with her. And I said, "What type of dad do you think I am right now?
Mm.
How can I be a better father to you?" And they're like, "You actually want the answer to that?" I'm like, how am I gonna know
At
if I
11, what
don't?
kind of what answers do you get from an 11-year-old? I'm so curious.
Oh man, she goes, "Daddy, I think you're doing a great job." And he goes like, "I just want like spend more time." Like that's kind of like they
Mm.
tell you that's not bad to me. It's jet fuel. It's propulsion for me.
Yeah.
Hey, it gives me feedback. I need that. I need to check in. How do I make you feel about me being your dad? I do
Mm.
the same thing with my wife. My part, same thing. How am I doing? I'm 18 years in, man, being married. I
Yeah.
love it, but I always check in. How can I be better in this relationship? And the whole thing. That I think is we're not taught to do that.
No.
We
No, because
fear
then you
it.
have to hear
We
somebody say
fear
something
it.
like, yeah, what if someone says something bad about what I do? Right. What am I going to do? Am I going to lose this connection if I hear something
Right.
negative? Right. And so and I think we're driven by that connection. And I love that
Yeah.
question.
And that fear, like you said, you're going, I know there's going to be a lot of fear in here. And as we're living on the edge of that fear constantly, it feels like I'm fearful of what people think of me, the type of work I'm doing. Will this be accepted? The whole thing.
Yes, totally.
And I love
Totally.
that I feel like you're trying to you're trying to let's wade through this. Okay. Let's slow down
Yeah.
and think about this actually.
Yeah. There's something that I talk about a lot in, so like I said, no religions, all religions, but in Japan, Shintoism is a form of religion there. And when you're walking towards a Shinto shrine, there's something called a torii. And a torii is like an orange gate. You've probably seen them before because lots of appropriation goes on in this country, the
Right.
United States. So you've seen these orange gates before. And they're put outside of a temple, and they're this color, it's called vermilion, actually. I love that word, right?
Love that
And
word.
they're this color, and they're meant to say, to wake you up, to say you're walking from the mundane to the sacred. As you walk from the path you're on and you walk into this temple space, you're walking from the mundane to the sacred. And I always say they're going like, wake the hell up, bitch. Before you come over here, get it together. Get in your right mind, because we need you on the right mind over here, because that's the space we're occupying over here, is the right minded space. And I think that we need those in our own life. We need places where we go, I need to walk through that. I need to walk through that torii. It's called a torii gate. I need to walk through that torii of my mind and go, I'm going home for the holidays. I'm going to see my family. They're going to all ask me what I do with my life. I know that's going to be hard on me. What do I need to keep myself centered, to keep myself kind, to not get sucked into old stories of what their questions mean, because they're really just curious. Right. And so A Course in Miracles would say our function is to forgive. To forgive over and over and over and over again. And I always, one of the phrases from A Course in Miracles is, be determined each day to leave your function unfulfilled. And I love that phrase. Be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled.
Mm.
And I kind of have a dual meaning for this. As Course would say your function is forgiveness, and mine is whatever your function is, do. So this is when, if anyone listening here, you have a passion, and if it's painting, it's training, it's working with your team, whatever it is, and you are distant from that. The number of, if you haven't done that in a number of hours, you've had some time off, or you haven't, if you're an actor, I'm like, when's the last time you acted?
Yeah.
You feel disjointed, you feel out of sorts, and you feel out of sorts because you haven't been in your function. And too often, like for an actor specifically, it's like, I haven't been on a set. Well, have you been to acting class? A painter is not only painting because he knows it's going to hang in the Louvre. They're painting because they have to paint, right?
Love that.
Yeah. And so a lot of us are taken care of, reminded of our function when people go to church. That's why they go to temple. That's why they go to these places where it is a space reserved for, we're here to remember who we are. You got 6 more days of the week to be that person, though. Remember the truth of who you are, right? So it's important to find. So I can imagine when you have these beautiful conversations with your wife and with your kids, like that is a moment of you reminding yourself, and it's actually reminding them in that same moment too. Like, I'm your dad and I want to be really good at it. Let's remember that. Yes. And so I'd love to hear your feedback. Right? I'm open to hearing what needs to happen. And that's a beautiful reminding.
It's almost kind of like too, like when, I've been in the fitness business 23 years. I've been a trainer the entire time, working really hard. And I have a lot of wonderful colleagues, but a lot of the pathway is get in through this door and then leave that door behind and
Mm.
move up into management and to an executive role. And I've done all those things, still do that, but I've always stayed being a trainer because I always want to remember who I am in this
Yeah.
business. I love being around people one on one, developing relationships, and the exercise is a price of admission for developing a
Yeah.
relationship for
Yeah.
that. And I think it's very easy. There's a whole kind of psychology behind the further up you go, the less you have in common with where you were,
Mm.
and remembering
Interesting.
how important that is,
Yeah.
to remember who you actually are. Maybe this isn't actually who you've moved up into, but you're forgetting that journey
Yeah.
of how difficult it is and how important it is to be centered in that thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I talk about this when I think about people who become coaches, and I say, well, are you coaching or are you just creating programs and a business and da da da? Like, you need to be coaching all the time because
Right.
that is your person. Those are your people. Like, a coach is a one-on-one relationship, whether it's a group scenario, you're still working with
Yeah.
people. Like, you need to be with people. So you're hearing the stories of your clients and you're hearing what's getting in their
Yes.
way and you're reacting. And the reason why you're so awesome at your job is because you've worked with a bunch of them. And so you can,
Yeah.
well, this is what worked for this client. And here's what I know is a way to help with that. And I think what you're saying is true. We can really forget who we are. And then there's also the truth of, growing into our second act or going into our third act of
Sure.
who you're becoming, right? And honoring that, but not forgetting
Not
the truth of
forgetting.
who you are, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think people get scared of that too. People who are afraid of success, or people will say, I think I'm just afraid of success, which I think is a bit of a cop out. But I think what you're really trying to say is, I get in my own way a lot.
mm.
I get in my own way a lot. I will find reasons to self-sabotage,
Mm.
right? I would rather stay safe than step forward. Yeah.
Man, that's powerful. I mean, I've heard that many times, almost kind of like the person who's almost going to graduate from whatever they're doing.
Oh, right.
And they all of a sudden they drop out and you're like, you're
Yeah.
almost there, you
Yeah. I have
know?
one more credit. I have one more credit to do, but I'm going to pull back
No,
now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
That's,
amazing how often something like that actually happens in our world.
well, if we can, I'm gonna give everyone a quick little biblical story, even though I'm not a biblical person, right? But you're all gonna know the story because we all know of the movie The Ten Commandments if you haven't seen it. But the Israelites were captured by Pharaoh and they're all
Mm-hmm.
slaves in Egypt, and then he lets them go, and they go running towards the Red Sea, and 40 years, but they get to the Red Sea, and then it's not that fast. Okay,
It
they
wasn't
get to
that
the Red
quick.
Sea, and when they get to the Red Sea, Pharaoh goes, no, I think I want them to be my slaves again. And so then the soldiers are coming after them, and they're at the Red Sea, and they're walking into the water. And I like to think of the water being right below your nose. It's this high before you don't know it's going to part. So you're this high. And if I take one more step, I will die. If I take one more step, I will die. In the imagining of faith, because in that moment, the way that the story goes, they all looked back and said, maybe we should go back to where the Pharaoh was. Maybe that would be better. And that's that moment of not taking that final credit, because if you take that next step, if you allow yourself to have faith that you can take this next step and you will live, you become a different person.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not comfortable enough to become this new person. Who are
Mm.
you after? Everyone listening can think of a moment when you're like, whoa, I learned something about myself in that moment. I knew something about myself. I knew I had some strength. The first time this happened, the first time I taught a group class and it was like more than 4 people enrolled, I was like, oh my God, maybe I really am a teacher. Like, obviously I'd been teaching for a long time, but that was the thing that suddenly unlocked it for me, right? And then I identified with myself differently. And then that thing, which was a characteristic that I wish I had about myself, became a strength. But we have to be willing to believe we can take one more step and we won't die. If I accept this degree, oh my gosh, I'll be able to carry this degree. I'll be able to
Yeah.
hold this degree. The old me will no longer exist.
Yeah.
Those are like, some people call those like a portal that you step through where you're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I think that's important to notice that we're going to have those in our lives.
Most definitely.
Adolescence is one we all have, right? We all work through our adolescence, which is a crazy time for most everybody, right? And that was one that was given to you, and it was given to you at a young age. And I think it's given to you at a young age to be like, hey, you're going to have many of these in your lifetime. You're going to have times when you're not going to know who you're being on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Right.
So powerful. Man,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Brian, people must really enjoy working with you. Seriously,
Thanks.
you have such a great perspective and you have this great way of you that I feel like you know how to like push people forward and push them. but in a
Yeah.
very beautiful way, in a way
Thank
that
you.
doesn't feel negative. It just feels like I'm on your team. But hey, we got to move forward.
What are we doing?
What are we
Hello.
doing
Yeah.
here? What's
Yeah.
going on? It's like the stories, the analogies, the wisdom. It's beautiful. Honestly, it's beautiful. It really
Thank you.
is.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I'm really glad I had a chance to be here and connect with you and your audience.
Yeah,
Really.
and it's just a pleasure meeting you. And that's
Thank you.
my purpose on this show, is just to meet people and to build relationships. The same, my mission, my whole life has been meeting people, developing and nurturing all these relationships, and moving forward and being a good person to other people.
Yeah.
I just, showing my humanity. That's what I want to
Yeah.
do with
That
people.
is, I mean, that is a very lucky place to be. That was a good, I mean, I was lucky, meaning we all should be there, but I'm lucky. I think I am lucky to be able to be in a space where you're really
Yeah.
occupying that.
Yeah.
These words don't come out. I said heaven is entered 2 by 2. This is I appreciate the space you created today.
Thank you. Please
Thank
tell
you.
everyone how they can check out everything you do. Brian Breaks Character,
Sure.
your coaching, everything.
Sure. So I think, I'm always on Instagram. It's Brian Says That is my handle on Instagram. And my podcast, Brian Breaks Character, is all kinds of conversations with all kinds of different creative people who are putting themselves out in the world, and how to do that. And we got a bunch of cool freebies over there if you come over there. If you've got any kind of creative business and you need support, I'd love to talk to you.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Brian, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time. Have an awesome day, man.
Thank you. You too. Be well.